What depth of water are we fishing?
4 to 6 feet.
4 to 6 feet. Can't see them.
Can't see them.
That's why there's no push pole.
That's a fact. We don't need no push pole in Jacksonville.
This is the first time in many, many episodes I have not brought push pole, but I knew I was fishing with you, and every time we fish with Ed Kabler, we fish deep.
And fast.
Deep and fast. There's always someone I can count on when I absolutely have to get a show done, and that's got to be Jacksonville's Eddie Kabler. The guy is amazing. What a power fisherman, and he understands the fishery there in Jacksonville. In Northeast Florida, one of the best scenarios or setups for targeting flounder is the St. Johns River itself. Because of the flow, the current there, and because of the structure, there's so much industrial elements to the river itself. They've got riprap, they've got big docks, perfect places that are ambush spots for big flounder. A few years ago, we did an episode with Eddie Kabler right there in Jacksonville once again, and basically the title of that show was Rocks and Docks, and that's his game, that's his strong suit. And when you're fishing in the St. Johns, you've got to have that mentality that you're gonna power fish the whole time, and you're gonna be using bigger, heavier baits, and you're gonna get hung up from time to time, but you are gonna catch some big fish, bull redfish, big trout, and in this case, big flounder. Come on.
Better fish.
They fight so different than a, you know, like a red drum or a nice one.
Ooh, nice fish, C.A.
That is a nice fish right there. That is a nice fish. And he got it too, man. Just broke my spinnerbait. He slammed that thing.
They're not as lazy as everybody says they are.
No, they're not. That's a beautiful fish. That was a straight retrieve. But that fish there would be plenty legal at 19 inches long. That's a nice fish.
Good job.
Yeah, he gave me a little wash down. A little bit of a wash down, my friend. There we go. I like it when they jump.
Yeah.
Oh, that's every bit the same size. Here, bring them in here. Nice, really nice.
See where a porpoise done grabbed him.
Yeah, you can see that too, can't you? Look at the backside.
Wow, yep.
You can see the teeth and everything. Now, this is another one that's probably close to 19 inches. These flounder, is this kind of typical?
That's about average size.
It's about average size. So it's a typical flounder here. Beautiful fish.
Great eating.
Oh, I know that.
Great eating.
That's why their numbers have to be protected. Beautiful. I'm gonna let him go over here so he won't tell, you know, Sam, Bob, and the rest of them on the other side.
Nice.
So what makes Eddie Kabler a good angler in this style of fishing? Well, once you figure it out, you start to understand when you're fishing with him that bait has to be in close contact with the bottom without getting hung up. But you're gonna have to make it so that bait kind of trickulates down, bounces off a rock, you lift it again, bounces off the mud bottom, lifts up again, bounces off a rock. To be able to do that, time it with the current, understand the gear ratio on your reel, lifting all these little tiny elements of the retrieve have to be in tune, or you spend most of your time fishing way above the fish too high because you're trying to be conservative and not get hung up. Or you get hung up, which those two options are terrible. You'll never catch a fish. But once you figure it out and you understand how to fish these fish, you can really catch a lot of flounder. Woo. Chatterbait. There's scattered rock that comes off these granite boulders that are up here that are visible. And they just lay in these washes behind them, and just as whatever side the tide flip-flops, they just sit on that side.
Exactly, they face inside the current, like into the current, and just wait for that bait, mullet, shrimp, whatever it may be.
And it's basically just a camouflaged ambush.
True predator.
That's why it's important to stay tight to the bottom. What do you think the biggest mistake most anglers make? Not having enough weight, fishing up above them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I keep it down, but I like keeping it up, 6 to 12 inches off the bottom, actually. That way they can see a little bit further out. My favorite way to target flounder is power fishing. I'm throwing spinnerbaits, chatterbaits, grubs. There's a lot of different ways to target flounder. That's my preferred way to catch them. Fast pace.
You got him that time.
Small guy.
Not bad. I like your version of small. When you have fast moving water and it's dark water, you need that bait that has a lot of contrast, that bait that has a lot of thump and feel. That's why we chose spinner baits and chatterbaits, or just the goat bait, that Z-Man goat. So many of my clients and some of our fans reach out to us when we're using that bait. Why are you using that bass bait in salt water? And it's because it gets noticed. It can be felt. You expand your strike zone, if you will, by using the goat. And in this scenario, where we were fishing anywhere from 4 to 6 feet of water in many cases, sometimes even deeper, it was really necessary to have a big thumping bait like the goat. There he is. There he is. I like it down here.
You're slow rolling it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Whoa. I mean it. Not the biggest one, but pretty fish, just pretty fish. So they've changed the regs on these. It used to be 11 inches, now it's what, 14?
14 inches.
And bag limit changed too.
Yep, it was 5 a person, used to be 10 a person. And they got a closed season now. Started last year.
In here, in the river and the creeks around Duval and Nassau, what inshore is a big flounder? What do they consider a doormat?
10 pounds.
10 pounder?
Yeah, 10 pounders. Biggest I've got was 12 pounds. It's been many years ago, but you always see a couple 10 and 11s every year.
I looked up to see what the record is for the state. You know what it is?
I believe it's like 22.
It's 20 pounds.
Yeah, it's
20
crazy.
pounds, 9 ounces.
It's a big fish.
One thing about flounder fishing, when they come to the top of the water and they start shaking their head, that hook is coming out. You either have to do two things. You either have to try to time swinging the fish over the side of the boat and catching the leader if he's small enough without breaking your rod, of course, or you've got to dip them up with a net. Because if you allow them to pancake and start shaking on top of the water, their mouths are so hard and they grip a bait so tight, oftentimes you don't really have them hooked. They're just holding on to the bait. And when you make that mistake a few times, they'll come off. You'll have plenty of instances where they just come off right at the boat. There he is. Slow rolling. Come to the top, baby.
Woo!
Nice. Look at the size of the mouth on that one. Oh, and he got off right there. Oh, he pulled my blade, my jig off. You had a big one too. I'm gonna have to switch up. I don't think mine are built for that size fish. I pulled two apart now. I might
It's a fun fish.
borrow a spinner arm from you. Yeah, that one I had was a good 19, 20 inches as well. When I turn on the Ray Marine, when I'm there in Jacksonville, it's not like being here on the Nature Coast. It's not like being in Louisiana, and it's not like being all the way down there in the Everglades. The entire satellite overlay is nothing but buildings. You're like in a metro area fishing urban stuff. And that, it really suits Eddie. I mean, it does, from his personality to his style of fishing. And honestly, it's hard to argue with the fact that it's super productive. I mean, like productive at another level, because you're not fishing these secret, quiet spots. You're fishing right out in front of everybody in community holes. He just has a way of doing it better than everybody else. As this current gets stronger, does it require you to add more weight to the jig head? Do you move from quarters, 3/8 to 3/8 to half ounce?
Absolutely. You gotta keep the bait down. And this current, as you can see, is ripping.
And does it give you an advantage to have a leader or not have a leader?
Some people believe so, but Flounder, I don't believe so. They're pretty aggressive. I think if they see the bait, they're gonna eat the bait. So I don't think a leader is necessary personally.
You're talking about that high incoming water and the first part of the outgoing tide. Why is that so?
Clean water.
Just cleaner.
Yeah, just cleaner. And you know, Flounder are very visual. So, you know, they want to see the bait. I mean, obviously they'll feel the vibration of the spinner or the chatterbait, but they need to see the bait. So I want that clean water.
If you've been watching our show for, this is going on 17 years, many of our episodes are where we're poling, it seems like, for miles through backcountry or acres of shallow grass flats. Occasionally we'll fish something where we're running a trolling motor, but we don't often fish where you're basically just going up 1,000 yards of shoreline, down 1,000 shoreline, back and forth. Well, when you're flounder fishing and that water starts coming in, these fish come out of the channel and they keep filtering up there. So the opportunity to catch fish over and over and over in the same sweet spot, well, it lives large. The ability is there. You just have to make the cast, and, well, you have to be able to keep from getting snagged up on the bottom, because these fish are lying around all this rocky bottom, and it is tough to stay in contact with your jig or your spinnerbait or your chatterbait long enough to get the bite. What other types of structure do these flounder really set up on? Docks?
Docks, troughs. You know, if you get a trough, a lot of docks. I mean, you know me, rocks and docks.
Rocks and docks, that's right.
Almost everything.
That's your game. That is your game.
You know, flounder is super structural. So any kind of structure you got.
Ooh, you stung one there. Staying down. One might be one of our better ones, huh?
Nah,
oh yeah,
he's decent.
That's a good one. You kidding me? That is a, you wipe your feet on that one. That's a good one, man.
You want to grab them?
Yeah, let me get, I almost want to net that one.
Nah, free spool.
I'm gonna say this one's probably,
it's a good fish.
Pushing 20.
That's a good fish.
Squeeze tail, he's about 19. That's a good fish though. That is a good fish. keep doing this.
They'll look good between pieces of bread, I'll tell you that.
The audience is probably wondering why we're releasing all these things, but it's closed season. It just closed 2 days ago, right?
October 15th.
Yeah.
Until December 1st.
So really, Ed, there's a skill to this, and the skill is being being able to swim the lure so it just crawls over the rocks just barely.
Yep, swimming across.
Because most folks are gonna fish this stuff with this heavy a jig head to combat the current, and they're gonna be hung up.
Yep,
and they're gonna lose $30 worth of tackle.
Absolutely, you gotta swim it.
You gotta swim it.
Takes a little while to figure it out.
I love fishing the Jacksonville area. And as much as I love fishing in all those marshy creeks that I've fished forever, it seems like in the past, fishing that hardcore downtown St. John's River fishing with Ed Kabler is just, it's just special, that power fishing style that he has, and being able to come up with a great show like this one for flounder fishing. And also I'd like to thank our camera boat operator, Brian Ducher. He was fantastic for this episode. You guys deserve all the credit for a great show. That might be my best.
It's a great fish.
Yeah, that's a good one there. That one's gonna be 20 for sure.
He's wide too.
Yeah, he's a wide body, like a little frying pan. You know, they have a hard mouth because every time that jig comes right out.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a super hard mouth. Wow.
Great fish.
That's a great fish. That is a great fish.
Beautiful fish.
That one would be good.
It's a great fish.
That one would look pretty good in a fire disc. All right, I can't believe I'm letting it go.
Nice.
Wow. Way to go, man. You have a hell of a flounder fishery here, my friend. Appreciate the net job.
Oh yeah.
I've lost enough of them today because I haven't netted them. Now, that's a lot of chunk of hook to put through one of those. And it's just amazing. You get them in that net and you just barely
falls out.
Falls out every time. They got a hard mouth. Today's tackle setup that Eddie Kabler and I used there in Jacksonville, Florida for the Flounder Pounder episode was by and large the spinnerbait setup. And what I've got here is I've got a typical R-bend spinner blade. And this is a Colorado blade, and I've got it rigged on a spinner arm that gives me some, what I'm gonna say, some variability in it, because I can change the weight of it based off how hard the tide is running. What do I mean by that? Well, this is a 1/2 ounce that I was using at the end of the day when the tide was really running hard. I started off the day with a 1/4 ounce trout eye jig head. Then as the tide picked up and the water started getting a little bit higher in tide height, I switched over to a 3/8, and this is the Redfish eye. And then there at the end when I needed more depth and the current was running at its absolute crescendo of strength, then I used the 1/2 ounce. Now I have a system in my BUZBE tackle box here where I color code everything so I know what the jig head is by looking at it. This clear eyes is always going to be my halves. The reds are always going to be my 3/8, and then these glow eyes are always my 1/4. And that way, without having to look or examine or compare, I've got it right there, you know, at my fingertips. I know which ones I'm gonna use. Now these are 3.75-inch goats. What's interesting is Eddie is not a Z-Man pro. He throws a bunch of other stuff. And when he looked on the Z-Man site, he goes, "Do you have any of those goats? Because those look like the perfect bait to throw to those flounder." So this was actually the first time he threw this bait. It's a 3.75. By the time you add the jig head to it, it's basically a 4-inch bait. What do they look like? They look a lot like a crawfish or maybe a frog if you were fishing them on a rigging hook. For us, they look like shrimp or some type of bait fish moving through the water. When you rig them properly on the spinnerbait, it gives you a pretty big profile, honestly, that gets the attention of the flounder, and I'm sure you'd be super successful because I catch a lot of snook on these baits. If you fished enough of the docks out there, you'd probably really wipe out some pretty good sized redfish as well. But that's basically our setup. Now I've got a piece of leader here. Eddie said that the leader's not that important, but I still felt it necessary to put some 30-pound fluorocarbon on here. Just makes it easier to handle and you don't break off as often. My setup and his setup was a little bit different from mine, but my setup was basically this 6'9" medium Terramar XX. I've got the Tranx 150 here. I was also throwing the Zodius with the 200 Corrado on it. I pack all my rods basically with 20-pound braids so I can get some good distance and some good depth. So that Power Pro 20-pound matched up with this Shimano setup is actually the best, in my opinion, for a delivery system for this spinnerbait fishing there in the St. John's. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, check out our YouTube channel. We have literally hundreds of tips like this that will make you a better angler.
Pow!